No dish embodies the time period in which it was popularized quite like Penne Alla Vodka. I mean, this kind of elegant trashiness could only come out of the decade that gave us Careless Whisper and the Chrysler LeBaron. Now, to understand why this dish exploded during the decade of decadence, we have to look at the socioeconomic factors at play during this era. You see, depending on who you ask, Penne Alla Vodka was created in Rome, Bologna, or New York City in either the late 70s or early 80s. This, of course, was a period of global economic turmoil in the wake of the 1979 oil crisis. In the first half of the 80s, while the American working and middle class were getting fucked in the ass by inflation, massive unemployment, and Reaganomics, the wealthy flourished under historic tax breaks for high-income individuals, leading them to indulge in the kind of excess many of us attribute to the decade. By a similar token, while the underdeveloped southern portion of Italy struggled to recover from the recession, the central and northern regions underwent an economic boom, which culminated in Milan joining Paris and New York as a hub for high fashion. Now, Reaganomics and Italian fashion may seem like a moot point in regards to a pasta dish, but we'll get there in a minute. As important as the economic and political climate of the 80s were to the story, another major factor was at play here. Conservative politics of the time notwithstanding, xenophilia was fashionable in the 80s. In America, at least, this took the form of European new wave and synthpop, offensive Asian comic relief in movies, and imported sports cars. It may be a reach on my part, but I think that America's affinity for anything exotic, coupled with Italy's newfound spotlight in the world of fashion, really helped cast Italian food in a more luxurious light than it had in previous decades. Although, this is the part where I also have to mention that Marcello Hazan likely played a big part in this as well. So, how exactly does all this tie into Penne Alla Vodka? Well, with all these factors at play, it was the perfect storm for this dish, this monument to excess, this amalgamation of ingredients that have absolutely no business creating a cohesive dish together to show up on every menu of every 80s nightclub that was trying to put on a veneer of luxury. And a veneer of luxury is exactly what the 80s were all about. With all that said, it's time to actually make this thing. To start out, you want to roll up and roughly chop about 3 ounces of sliced pancetta. I'm actually using prosciutto here because I couldn't find pancetta during quarantine. However, I actually kind of like the stronger flavor it gives this, so use whichever you'd like. Next, take a cold sauté pan, preferably one that's not warped like this one is, and add a generous glug of olive oil before adding our pancetta and turning the burner on medium heat. Starting it in a cold pan like this will help the fat render out of our pancetta and add a ton of flavor to the finished product. While the pancetta is cooking, dice a shallot or half a yellow onion, being careful not to almost accidentally cut off your index finger like I did in the process. You're also going to need to peel and chop about 5 cloves of garlic, or in my case, 3 absolutely massive cloves of garlic. Once the pancetta is just starting to get crispy, use a slotted spoon to remove it from the pan and reserve it on a plate lined with a paper towel. Next, you're going to want to add the onions, hit them with a big pinch of kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper, and saute them until they're just starting to turn golden brown. You then want to throw in the garlic along with a bunch of red pepper flakes and let it cook for about a minute or until super fragrant. At this point, you can optionally add a little bit of anchovy paste and give it a stir until it disappears. This isn't going to make it taste fishy or anything, it'll just add a nice meaty element to the sauce. Next, you're going to want to deglaze the pan with about 2 shots of vodka. If you're using gas, you definitely want to stand back because this has the potential to ignite and burn your eyebrows off. Let that reduce for about a minute or until the vodka fumes stop burning your nostrils. Then add the pancetta back to the party before dumping in 1 28-ounce can of whole peeled tomatoes and crushing them with a potato masher that you got at the dollar store. You can use crushed tomatoes if you like a smooth sauce, but much like my romantic partners, I like it a little thick and chunky. Next, change your pants because the tomatoes splash in your crotch. Then add a metric fuck ton of oregano. I'm also adding some invisible basil here because it's the spring of 2020 and regular fresh basil is sold out everywhere. Once the herbs are added, bring this to a gentle simmer, then let it reduce, stirring occasionally for about 30 minutes. After 30 minutes have elapsed, get a pot of pasta water going. Then, turn the heat on the sauce down to low, and slowly stir in heavy cream until the sauce turns your desired color. I use a little more than half a pint here. This is also the point where you need to taste for seasoning, because other than salty ingredients and a little seasoning on the onions, we haven't added any salt or pepper. Now, if you've watched any pasta videos on YouTube ever, you probably know what to do from here. Toss as much pasta as your heart desires into salted boiling water and set a timer for 2 minutes less than the package directions. Once the timer goes off, drain your pasta before returning it back to the pot. then ladle over your desired amount of sauce. From here, you want to stir the pasta until it's finished cooking to al dente. Then stir in a tablespoon of cold butter before finishing with a little pecorino or Parmesan cheese. And then dust another 2 pounds of pecorino onto the plated pasta for Instagram. So, how does this actually taste? Well, it tastes like doing a line of coke off the removable vanity mirror of your Lamborghini Countach with the girl who's about to go down on you for a roll in a Whitesnake video. And I wouldn't have it any other way.